our inner voice, our external voice, often what we say verbally might be very different from what we feel and what we're saying inside our heart, inside our mind. And this is a conversation that I've had so many women struggle with. And that's why I'm so happy that Dee is here. And we're going to be diving a lot deeper into what this conversation is about. Hello, welcome to Mindful Conversations. I'm your host, Tanya Otterstein-Liehs. And with me is my guest today, Dee. Hello, Dee. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here as we dive deep into this really, really vital conversation.
Thanks, Tanya. I'm really looking forward to this. This is quite something I'm very, very passionate about. So it's great to be here.
And Dee, the audience is probably saying, oh, where is that accent from? So where in the world, because I'm in Canada, where on the other side of the globe are you living in, Dee?
I live just outside of Canberra in Australia, so we have the sexiest accent in the world, apparently.
From a
Yeah.
Canadian? Yeah, I love the accent. Oh, so Dee, as we I'll say go on to our journey in life, we often start in one career and our path changes because we learn to really hear that inner voice. And I'd love for you to share, Dee, a little bit about your journey and what brought you to where you are today, especially when it comes to finding that voice and letting it bloom.
When I say to people, this is a lifelong journey, it really has been. I'm going to start way at the beginning, but I come from a
Yeah.
family that is very emotionally stunted. Um, Love them dearly, but don't do emotions, don't do anything that is outside the collective box of communication, of expressing what they feel, of really deep diving into releasing those parts of ourselves that are actually so innately and distinctly connected to the voice. So it starts there. And then, as any self-respecting black sheep of the family, I find myself going into the performing arts. I decided that I wanted to be, or knew that I wanted to be a performer probably about the age of 12, except I wanted to go into music theatre and, spirit fingers and kickball changes, ahoy. Loved it. So I did that. I actually pursued that for a long time. When I was at uni, however, I was presented and I trained classically as a musician, instrumentalist as well. And then at 15, I started getting voice lessons. But when I got to uni to do voice and to do music theatre, I had a coach and a teacher who gave me this incredible music. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And he's like, this is opera. And I went, then what the hell have I been learning for the past like 3 years? And I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And from a from a voice point of view, we are like walking amplifiers. We're walking foghorns of sound. We are designed and trained to use voices in a way that is just a miracle in a lot of ways. It is, you know, ridiculous amounts of sound coming out of our mouth to fill spaces of 2 to 3 thousand people. That and I have been saying this a lot over the last few months, and even now I'm like, that is a lot of sound. And it is a lot of sound, but we are trained to do this. And for me, the stage and being able to sing like this and being able to produce sound like this was just freedom for the first time ever. No one was telling me to shut up. No one was telling me to get back in my box. No one was telling me to, to be smaller, quieter,
Yeah.
which for women that's been our entire lives. We've been told to shrink down, to be quiet, to be the good girl, to, the list is endless. Those stories and patterns have been going for, thousands of years. And for a lot of people, this may not be new, but for me, being up on stage and having that freedom was amazing, except I was still layering on masks to be able to produce that freedom of sound. We're playing it through characters, we're exploring people that aren't us, but may have elements of us. And in 2013, well, 2012, I should say, while I was working with one of the major companies here in Australia, I basically had the start of my spiritual awakening. and it all came crashing down. And I sat on my bed for about a week and just cried. I was tears, like couldn't stop, could not stop for love nor money. And I had to contact, the agency, the management to say, look, I actually can't go on. And we're in the middle of a season. So we just finished a main stage and we're about to go on tour. And I was like, so you're gonna have to send on my understudy.
Yeah.
And the poor woman, she was like, oh. Um, so it was a very lively show, a lot of moving parts, a lot of choreography, all that sort of stuff. And she did an amazing job. And I finally picked myself up and, continued on with what was quite a significant moment in time, as for many who have kind of gone through that or are going through that. And I ended up having a chat with my mentor at the end of that year to say, how did the year go? This was the final year of my young artist, which is the epitome of, a young artist career before you launch yourself into as a solo performer. And I was like, yeah, apart from that thing in the middle. And he was like, yeah, you shouldn't have ever mentioned anything about that. You should just put a mask on and pretend it doesn't exist. And and my world came crashing down again, and all the veils lifted. And I was like, "You're exactly like everyone else who's like," and I just didn't believe anyone anymore.
Yeah.
I actually that face value didn't exist for me after that point. I didn't trust anything that anyone said to me for a long time, and it took me on, aside from that, I had all of these tidbits of like working with archetypes through my uni years, and I really dove deep into that experience, to really explore the voice and how it came out and how the sound changed and how people's innate voices became a thing. And I was coaching people and I was teaching, at university level, and I was all these things. And then for the next 10 years after that, I was still doing that. And I was getting closer and closer to being able to really nut out what it did, what it does when a voice is completely released. And it really comes down to resonance. There is an increase of resonance that happens in the voice and in the body, because the body is the amplifier of two little muscles that sit in your throat. That is the creator of sound here, but the whole body is the amplifier. And so I went deep down the rabbit hole of really exploring with not just students I was working with, but then speakers, entrepreneurs. And I started this work formally probably about 2016, and probably about 5 years too early. Now, however, this is a conversation, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of it, because we are now at a precipice where the new energy, the new era, the new age is asking us to step up in a way that is verbally, in a way that has never been asked of us before, because the messages have such big weight behind them. And unless you can tap into the resonance, people are burning out quicker, because the voice capacity is unable to hold that amount of sound without pushing. So we get our resilience tapped and capped. We have the amount of people who find that they just aren't landing in the same way that they used to years ago, whether it's in their business, in their life, they're having conversations that don't impact the same way. And it's because the increase of resonance is required, and the resonance requirements have changed. So we're really being asked to step into something much bigger than
Mhm.
ourselves. And our voice really is a gateway of these bigger energies to amplify that into the world very intentionally. But yeah, we're now at that point, which is, for me, that's very exciting.
And looking back, Dee, when we first had a conversation when we met
Mm,
each other virtually, I,
mm,
really recall how we talked about how, we hold back our voice, right?
mm,
And oftentimes when you listen to someone speak, or more specifically a woman speaks, you can tell by her voice when she's passionate about something
mm,
and when she's holding back something.
mm,
And this can happen during, like, even a normal, during a whole conversation with a person. You can hear the tones change.
mm,
You can hear even, how loud or quiet they are. And,
mm,
going in your line of work, and when you work with women, Do you help define that? Do you help strengthen the voice that they have, that they've been wanting to release?
Mm. Yes, definitely. So we, as human beings on this planet, our 8 billion human beings on this planet, we each have our own vocal signature that is designed for us based on not just the vocal folds, how long or short or thick they are, but also our anatomy. So our entire anatomy creates that sound. Now, when we as women have had this kind of lineage where everything has stopped, there are key signatures that we hear, colors that don't happen, and every voice has a color, and also uh, heightened access and lower access to frequencies that are built within us that we're actually designed, built to access. Now, as women, when we get excited, but we've been told our entire lives to not get excited, to not show passion, to be very calculated, and that is very masculine. And our job is not to be masculine. Our job is to balance masculine and feminine within us. Now, as a feminine driver, we it is full of color. It's a rainbow of color. It is a rainbow of frequency color. And we have that within us. If it's stopping, however, the access to those frequencies becomes like, you're half using a tool that's designed to be used. Let's get out your, for example, like my husband has heaps of these, but your Swiss Army knife, for example, where it has all these things that it's able to do, right? If you're not accessing all those, they get really hard to pull out. They get really jammed in and stuck, and you can't pull it out when you actually need it. When you actually need it is all the time, because it gives permission and communication to other women to actually express themselves that way, because we've been told that we're not allowed to. So, yes is the short answer. On top of that, from a sound point of view, when we hear that it's stunted, and I hear this all the time, we hear this upward, first, the upward inflection is so common. So all this going up at the end of our sentences, and
Right.
nothing comes down, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, please, just land, just land. That sound is from a deep rooted insecurity that occurs in our lower three chakras, our lower three energy centers, which is safety, creative expression, and self autonomy. So when they're upset, we start hearing things like this upward inflection. We're asking the outward world to tell us exactly who we are and whether we're right, and these kind of things. The other big one at the moment is vocal fry, where for too long we've been told that we need to anchor our voices down to sound authoritarian and to have authority. So this, and you hear it like beautifully. Sean Connery in 1950s, and we're talking James Bond. And there's a Bond, James
Yeah,
Bond.
yeah,
That
yeah,
growl at the end,
yeah.
women do that more than men.
Mhm.
And that is that anchoring down into a sense of authority. So again, it comes down to those first three chakras that are unbalanced, or are trying to overproduce, and us running in our masculine, which is then capping this plethora of color and sound and ability to access multiple frequencies and dimensions at the same time just by using our voice.
Yeah, it makes me think of myself, right? Depending what room I'm in, if let's say there's because I'm very intuitive, so I can feel the
Mm-hmm.
energies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I, let's say, am in a room full of a lot of men, my voice changes. It
Mm-hmm.
gets more authoritative. That deepness comes from more the
Mm-hmm.
gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather being in a room full of women and the energies are like, okay, there's a lot of women going through healing here, or there's a lot of women that are unsure of things, then my voice changes again, becomes
Mm-hmm.
softer, it becomes
Mm-hmm.
quieter, it becomes
Mm-hmm.
slower.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you find as well that depending on who you're speaking with or uh, what you're surrounded by, the energies,
Mm-hmm.
that you your voice naturally shifts as well,
Mm.
and you play upon those energies that are in the room?
Yeah, so there is a way of doing that without it being manipulative. But yes, is the short answer because
Yeah.
you, I mean that's part of our design. We're meant to. We're meant to interact and play, and this is not no at no point is this a solo interaction. We're not standing in a stage by ourselves,
Yeah.
monologuing, even though that's not really, that's not necessarily on its own either.
Yeah.
But we're always interacting, always. So if you're not receptive to the energy as well as standing in your power to then outlay energy in response to that, that's where the glitch happens. So if you're taking that on and changing and adapting to the energies that are in the room, absolutely, yes, you are designed to. When it becomes your first and prominent fuel, however, that's where the problem lies. So, for example, I work with a lot of women, particularly who are quite high up in roles of management in business, and surrounded by men. And they're coming to me with vocal nodules, which is where basically like calluses on your vocal cords. And that energy has been pushed without enough airflow to be able to support the downward trajectory of the voice. That energy can't be sustained because we're not designed to sustain it.
Yeah.
Our voice is meant to sit the way it's designed to sit within us. It has that sweet spot and then it can go up and down from there. But when you're grinding it down into those spaces, because the energy is telling you that you need to, but you don't know how to use the apparatus to create the most effectual sound, then you end up causing yourself a lot of problems. And it's not just vocal. We're talking about like complete essence issues. So that energy no longer is vocal energy. We are talking about the summation of your entire energy being that's being altered rather than it being standing in your power and then producing from there. And this is the epidemic we have, is that we have to actually go, you know what? All that stuff you're holding on to, get rid of it.
Yeah.
And now
Exactly.
produce sound.
Yeah.
Because it's those energy blockages. It's like a hose. I talk about this a lot in vocal training. When you've got a hose and you put kinks in your hose, the water doesn't flow the same way.
Mhm.
Our energy being as a column of sound out works exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So it's not that the blockages, it's that the flow stopping.
Yeah. I always find too, when you listen to someone speaking, you
Mm,
can really tell by how their language, how their words are flowing,
mm,
or whether there's huge fluctuations in the way they're speaking.
mm.
And I find that that has real hidden insight
Yes,
into it as
yes,
well.
that's exactly right. And that's what
Yeah.
I listen for. So my superpower, creepily enough, is is when I hear people, I already know where their blocks are sitting
Yeah.
or where their limitations are sitting or where the flow of water is not coming out.
Mhm.
And it can be quite unsettling for some. I
Yeah.
don't ta it's not so it's only now that I'm starting to actually talk about this that people are like, oh, you do that. I'm like, yes, I do that. And I have done for a very long time.
Right.
That's my intuitive gift. So my intuitive gift comes through sound and frequency. And it's not just vocal frequency, it is energetic frequency that I'm like, okay, that's what's doing that, and that's what's doing it, and that's what's doing that. So it's, 25 years plus of training just in voice alone, in opera alone, but also. So it's certainly an adventure. But I do challenge anyone to look at there are a lot of people at the moment who are going, oh, I've cleared the energy from my throat chakra. I'm like, congratulations. There is still, because we're not just energy, we are biology as well. And people need to remember that we are we are on the 3D having 5D, sorry, other way around, 5D having 3D experiences. It's morning. Brain's not quite working yet. Anyway, these experiences, we have to remember that we're on Earth. And those earthly restrictions and restraints, as in we have a hard light body. It is made of biology. We can't forget that because we're not meant to. We're meant to use it.
Yeah. I always recommend to people all the time that, best thing they can do for themselves is just get out in nature because
Mm-hmm.
nature tends to help us relax. It tends to allow us to release things we didn't even know. It
Mm-hmm.
tends to calm us. And, the most powerful thing about nature is maybe you go into a forest kind of feeling stressed. But then as you're walking, you feel your breath really, you just relax. You feel your stress release. And as you're walking, this calmness and this
Mm-hmm.
peacefulness comes over you.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're finished, you walk through nature, you just feel this transformation happen. So it's kind of like I'm going to combine these two things. I feel that if people allow themselves to just feel free,
Mm-hmm.
allow themselves to get to nature so that their voice can get stronger because the voice, again, that we talked about is connected with emotions,
Mm-hmm.
that they can become a whole new person, maybe a person they've been wanting to become. Like, what are and if the few minutes we have left, what are your thoughts on
Mm-hmm.
that?
I absolutely agree. However, I don't, it's for me, it's a much more complex conversation
Yeah,
in that there's a level of safety and
yeah,
there's a lot of talk about, our nervous systems being the epicenter of our safety. And if you are in nature but still don't feel safe, that voice is still not going to release.
right.
There'll be things that are hidden away that you don't necessarily affect you. Like, I recently went through doing some mother wound and father wound work on the energies that are so innately surrounded because of certain things with my upbringing and so on. But that energy, working with that energy, was enough to release my hip, which I've had problems with for 10 years. And
Yeah,
those subtle shifts, energetic shifts that you don't necessarily know that are there, have to come from an element of safety first and trust within self first. So you can be in nature, absolutely. And nature is a great way, as long as the space that you're in is safe for you. Nature is a great way of really communicating from your inner biology and your inner frequency and your inner system to a system that is here to help you and to help replicate those enhancing energies that we are designed to communicate with, whether that be intentionally or intentionally. And the fact that people are starting to realize this again, Indigenous cultures around the world have been barking on about this for ages, and we're finally like, oh, yeah, okay. We're finally getting the picture, but there is a communication, and it has to be safe, though, for that communication to then be receptive, because it is as much receptive as it is outward. So, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
To
Mm.
allow yourself to be open to receive, I'll say.
Mm. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'd love to know from you, Dee, that, what is it? Because people struggle with maintaining positivity, and that can be such an overused word
Mm.
nowadays.
Mm.
But what allows you to, I'm going to say, bring your positive energy
Mm.
outward?
I am one of these people who has been passion fueled my entire life. And I've recently gone down the human design and gene keys rabbit hole as a manifesting generator, 5-1 line. But manifesting generator as an emotional manifesting generator, someone who is very much driven by their passion. By when something lights me up, I run toward it. And I've
Yeah.
lived that way for a very long time. For years, I was told not to be a performer. Years, years. You'll never make it. And I'm like, oh yeah, nah. And I have had a great career, a blast of a career. I have done things that, I pinch myself every day. I have traveled the world. I have worked with, the best of the best, not just in opera, but in mainstream music as well. Like these experiences, I'm like, oh my gosh, pinch myself. This is amazing. And it lights me up and it freaks people out. And when people get into my energy and they're like, wow, you're really passionate. I'm like, yeah, because this life is to be passionate about.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that, it's always been that sort of that compass point where I've gone like, okay, yeah, when I'm losing time, I know I'm great. Like
Yeah.
this is great.
Yeah.
You've got
Super.
to follow the point though, and trust. Again, it's that trust thing. You must trust that whatever happens, it just happens.
Yeah.
It's going to be it. It's not for product all the time. Like,
Yeah.
and I do things now
Yeah.
that isn't for performing. It's just for me.
Yeah. I always say trust in the journey, you know,
Absolutely.
trust in the signs and the symbols, and trust in your dream. May
Mm,
not happen overnight, but you're
it
on the
won't.
journey to take you there.
Mm,
And I love that you touched upon that, because a lot of people struggle with, well, why is it not happening now? And then they just give up. It's like, no, it takes time, right? But enjoy each moment. Keep on thinking it is going to happen. And that
mm,
makes that I'll say that waiting process a little bit easier.
mm.
Yeah, and do you know there's some questions here that we're going to learn a little bit more about Dee as the person
Sure.
as we're
Sure.
slowly drawing to a close here. We all have quotes that we just
Mm,
absolutely love, and
mm,
often, I mean, there's a few that I love, right? But if you can
mm,
narrow it down to one quote that you absolutely love, and you basically, I'm feeling that you've lived by it for a long
mm.
time now.
There's actually two, believe it or not, and I'll
Yeah.
give you the abridged version of both because they're
Yeah.
quite long quotes. My first book on when I started my awakening was actually Marianne Williamson's Return to Love, and for a lot of people, it is. I love Marianne Williams. Williamson, yeah, Marianne Williamson is my go-to, and I still have her
Yeah.
book. The very
Yeah.
like we're talking, 15, 16, however many years ago now.
Yeah.
So, that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, quote. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And it has taken me a long time to sort of really get into
Yeah.
that quote because it is so in depth. The other is even before Brene Brown made it famous, but it is the Theodore Roosevelt quote. It's not the critic who
Yeah.
counts, not the man who points out a strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, because that was my life for a very long time. Is that I was, why aren't you famous yet? Why aren't you? I'm like, dude, I don't. Opera's not going to make you famous. Like,
Yeah.
please. We don't necessarily do it for the fame. We're not,
Yeah.
no, I've never done anything for fame. I've always done it because I've been genuinely passionate about it. But everyone's an armchair critic, and it's particularly
Yeah.
bad now thanks to reality TV. Everyone thinks they have the right to be able to comment, and particularly
Yeah.
around voice, which is so personal. People have the right to comment on other voices, even though they've never done it themselves
Yeah.
and wouldn't dream of even taking a singing lesson or a voice lesson of any kind. Like, it's just like, go away. Like, shoot.
Yeah. I'm here because I want to be here, and I'm feeling
Yeah,
it and just doing it, right?
that's it. And that's the scariest thing you can do. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
And I want to go really diving deep here with this
mm,
question. And I'm going to say right now, you cannot give an answer of family. Okay.
mm.
So if
Done.
D today was the last day of your life,
Hmm.
what is the one thing that you would be grateful for?
To have lived it as fully as I possibly could have. That is what I strive to do. And if you're passionate, you really are tapping into those parts of you and the world that need that passion right now more than ever. But for me, it's having like squeezed every last essence out of life that I possibly could. Um, yeah, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that almost a hidden subtle message that I've allowed myself
Mm.
to fully engross and live life and do what I've always been meant to do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. I'm curious,
Yes.
if Dee, you did not exist at all in this universe, on this earth today, why would the world need to create you?
Oh, that's a great question. Why would the world want to create me? I've
Need
always
to
felt
create
we
you.
need to create me, yeah. I have I have always felt it, and it comes back to that passion element. I have always felt that I am here to upset, to challenge in ways that I don't even realize I'm doing it half the time. Again, it's all that hidden stuff, particularly when it comes down to passion. It's like a permission slip. And when that permission slip is given, magic happens. And that's what I feel like I'm here to create is to inspire magic, the magic in others.
Beautiful. I love that.
Mm,
That there's magic in all of us,
mm,
and you're here to inspire others to allow that magic to bloom in
mm,
whatever way feels authentic to them, even
mhm,
though they've never wanted to admit it or allow it to
mm.
happen. But
Yes.
you're here to tell them it's okay. It needs to
Yeah.
happen. You
Yeah.
deserve for that magic
Yeah.
within you to bloom and blossom.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Great question.
Dee, yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. I feel you've really unleashed or opened up
Mm,
ways that people have not thought about where their voice comes from,
mm,
where it leads, and I'll say even the hidden feelings and emotions we all face. The voice plays a
mm,
huge part of that
mhm,
in allowing it to come through
mm,
in the ways we talk, in the ways we sing, in the ways we're
mm,
vocal,
mm.
and even through our emotions, the way we feel
Yep.
stems often through our voice and
Mm,
those deep-seated hidden treasures and
mm.
magic we didn't know existed before.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you
lovely.
so much for the conversation. It's been beautiful.
Yes, thank you. And all of those that were here listening today, whether you're catching the live or recording, thank you so much. This is Tanya Otterstein-Liehs saying to remember, if you haven't yet, to give yourself a compliment. And as you go to bed this evening, think about the best thing that happened because there's always something beautiful and wonderful that happens every day. And when you wake up tomorrow, be grateful for being alive, for waking up and being able to experience another day. To all of you, love who you are and value who you are. Bye bye. Bye, Dee.
Bye. Thanks.